It is. So here you are. Oh yeah, thank you for meeting me and agreeing to do this podcast. I
Oh,
think
thank you.
your expertise in leading events in a part of the world that at the moment is booming. It's going to be meaningful for my students.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to have a conversation with you after so many years.
So many years. How long has it been?
13 since 2012, no?
13 years. For the record, we met in Doha when we opened the St. Regis Hotel. I was the assistant director of food and beverage in charge of banqueting, and Olja came in as a supervisor of banqueting. That
Many, many
was
years ago.
many years ago. What did stand out for you? Because obviously you started your career in banqueting, which means that events was in your blood.
Well, actually, before I joined the St. Regis, which back in the day used to be a part of Starwood, no longer. Yeah, before I came to Qatar, I was actually working for a non-profit organization back home in Serbia, where I'm originally from. I started as a conference producer. Back in the day in 2008, we organized the first international tourism conference, bridging the gap between the industry and students. I'm very happy to be here today and talking to you because I know our podcast is actually aimed to your students, and I'm always happy to give back because I remember the days when I was really appreciative of the time that professionals would take aside and help us little ones get passionate about this industry. So yeah, I started as a conference producer, and then the opportunity came along, and then I ended up in Qatar, which was quite adventurous at the time. Very different from where I'm originally from, but it was a great experience. And I think probably in my entire working career was the most difficult experience I've gone through. And it was very hard work and it was very long hours, and pre-opening a hotel is never an easy task. But also I would say probably an experience that I learned the most from, if that makes sense. It's almost like having a foundation being built,
Mm.
and rolling up your sleeves and really getting into the trenches and learning the business from the masters. So yeah, I'm looking back with a fond memory to those times.
We take the good things and the learnings with us wherever we go, and we build our foundations to develop. So, one of the things that you remember vividly from Doha, from the
Mhm.
time that we were working together, what would that be?
Well, a few things really. From that was my first time to actually work in a hotel. As I said, my background prior to that post was being a conference producer. Just realizing the scale of it, it was a large hotel. It was, if I remember correctly, over 350 rooms. But at the time, it was 800 colleagues working on the pre-opening. And I remember on my first day when I arrived, I was walking through the corridor, and one of the colleagues was taking me to the HR office to do my onboarding. And I remember passing through those corridors. It was a very long corridor. And everybody was saying hi and good morning and how are you? And I was looking at these people thinking to myself, I don't really know you. I don't know why you're saying hi to me because in Serbia we don't do that unless you know someone. So I think one of the biggest thing is actually that cultural shock coming from where you're from and going to a completely different country and suddenly realizing how to work with over 40 nationalities from all over the world. And it was quite interesting, and also the language, right? Because obviously back in Serbia we speak Serbian, and then you're in Qatar and everybody speaks English. And then I thought my English was good, and then I realized, oh my God, I don't even know how to say a detergent or a softener or some things in daily life that you didn't really have to use ever before. It's quite interesting actually, and it kind of set the scene because after Doha, I moved on and I went to Houston, and I remember at the time I was really grateful for this year in Doha, because it almost prepared me to go and live in the States, because I realized if I was going to go to the States before I went to Doha, I would have been completely lost. So yeah, Doha was a great stepping stone for what came later.
Yeah. And what came later was you digging your heels and going more into the event world, wasn't it?
It was indeed. So I've got an opportunity to work with the Greater Houston Convention and Visitors Bureau, and it was the opportunity of my life. That's something that I always aspired to do. When I was a student, I always wanted to work on the government side of things and wanted to promote the city where I lived, or the bureau where I ended up working. And so the whole aim of Greater Houston Convention and Visitors Bureau was to attract big events into Houston, whether they're national or international. And I was one of those lucky ones to actually work on in the international department, and it was the best job in the world. Again, very multicultural. That was my first time to be in the States as well, and it was quite a funny story. I remember sitting on a plane in Doha with Qatar Airways, great airline, by the way. I'm not being paid for this, just saying. And then I flew straight from Doha to Houston, 14 hours direct flight. That was awful. Hey, but I'm talking to Australians, so you guys know what that is. So it was quite interesting, and I remember I was thinking, yeah, I'm going to meet all these Americans, blah, blah, blah. And then I arrived to the office, and then the girl behind me was from Mexico. The girl next to me was from Chile. My boss was from Argentina, and then a couple of real Americans, right? But no, it was really multicultural, and it was the best job in the world. So we were constantly meeting local ambassadors from various different fields, from medicine to oil and gas in particular. And then we were traveling around the world, meeting big international associations, lobbying for them to come and host their meetings in Houston, because the economic effect from those big events coming into the city is just huge, and it has a huge impact on city development, on development of infrastructure. Think Olympics, for instance. Every time a country bids for Olympics, there's a huge infrastructural development that follows, which results in job creation and so on and so forth. So on a smaller scale, international associations and big international conferences or exhibitions, for that fact, do a similar thing. And this is why ever since I was a student, I really wanted to end up in the events industry. And I remember back in the day, I was studying tourism, and we had business tourism as a subject. And they were saying, yeah, back in the day, it was like 90% of all travel spend sits with business tourism. Yet when it comes to the amount of people traveling, it amounts for just less than 1%. A long time ago. Those stats have probably changed by now. But when I was listening to this, I was like, okay, well, that's where I want to be then. And it's quite interesting, because I know when we talk about events in general, you can always look at it from really two streams. So you have the fun events, and then you have the corporate events. And fun events, I always cluster them like that, because you're looking into sport events, you're looking into concerts, you're looking into road shows, festivals, all fun stuff. And then you have the boring side of things, where I belong, where I always wanted to belong. And the boring corporate side of things is where you have big events, like big exhibitions, trade events, big conferences, associations, where the learning is. I've always been a nerd. Where you have big learning opportunities. And those are the events that actually move humanity and bring innovation to our daily lives without us even realizing it. But it's funny, because I guess one needs to understand oneself, and you kind of feel, what kind of person am I? And if I want to end up in the events industry, am I a party person, or do I like my beauty sleep at 10 o'clock in the evening? And then based on that, you decide whether you want to go on a fun side, or you want to go to a boring side, my side. And I always like to give an example of me and one of my best friends. Like we're best friends, but we are complete chalk and cheese. And Diana is a party girl. She loves partying. She loves music. She doesn't miss a festival, doesn't miss a concert in her day. And Diana is a very successful entrepreneur. She has her own marketing agency now, but back when she was a student, she was working on one of the biggest music festivals in Southeast Europe. And Dana was always, she will roll up her sleeves and she will go and meet with all these celebrities and musicians and whatnot. And she'll be partying with them until 4 o'clock in the morning. And then she always invited me to come along, but I will always fall asleep at like 10 o'clock in the evening to the point that everybody was laughing at me. But then I knew it's not for me. And I like to have my weekend off, and I like to go home at 5 o'clock in the evening, and I like my structure and process. So I've chosen the corporate side of things. But and this is the beauty of the events industry as well. You kind of have a choice depending on what kind of person you are. You have a choice to be a fun one or a corporate one.
I do remember, to your point, when you came in Doha, Dea back then, he said, "I've just hired a girl and she is a general." So what do you mean? And he said, "You see, I was because he came in the higher Belgrade where he did all the interview, and that's where he hired you from.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why he hired you was because of your ability to manage your staff and the way you were giving them directions and telling them what is expected of them and how things should be done." And when he came back, he said, "Evan, you're not gonna believe this, but this girl, she's tiny." I'm describing what he just said. Right?
Massively inappropriate, just say.
But she is a force of nature. She will get things done, and she will be an asset for us. And that was the memory from back in Doha when you came in. I remember vividly the first day that you came in, and yes, the long corridors and the long halls and hellos and everyone, which kind of makes me think, because of if you haven't done a pre-opening before and you don't have that experience, you don't understand or appreciate the relationships that you build. Because you're under the pump for a very long period of time. You build a family-like relationship with your co-workers, which is an amazing thing, because that can translate or transpire for a very long time. Case in point, 13 years later, we're having this podcast.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
So here's a question for you, right? Why would somebody choose to do events, even though long hours? You're missing out on Christmas, you're missing out on holidays. You're probably working at times that are not suitable for family. Why choose events?
You see, I'm going to go back to my fun part and the corporate part, because it's not always like that. If you're on a fun part, you miss your Christmases and you miss sometimes birthdays, and you work very long hours. It doesn't need to be like that, because on the corporate side of the events, quite often is actually not like that. And in my case, just for the record, so I'm currently in Dubai. I'm working as an events director of the Hotel Show. It's the largest hospitality exhibition in Middle East and Northern Africa, and it's based here in Dubai. So it's not like that, because my event happens once a year. So I have a full cycle to work with a team to organize this event. And yes, probably 2 or 3 days before the event, we do work a bit longer hours. And then obviously during the event, we barely get any sleep whatsoever, but the event lasts 3 days. And after that, we get a bit of a downtime, and then we can recover and then start planning the next cycle. So yeah, it comes to the nature of the event. If you're working on sport events, if you're working on festivals, if you're working on music concerts, yes, absolutely, you're working long hours and all the rest of it. But if you're working on a corporate side, it's actually very corporate. So it's a typical 9 to 5 job, and you get your weekends and you get your birthdays and you plan your family, or you take your Christmases off and New Year's off or whatnot. And beauty of working on the corporate side of things is corporate events rarely take place in family time, meaning not over Christmases, not over New Year's, because not during the summer, not in August, because that's the time we all take off. And planning a B2B event, planning an event for trade, isn't going to succeed if you book a time slot that is over the prime family time. And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah. It is intensive, though. You got to admit that regardless which stream you're going for, the demands of the client, the scale of the business, the opportunity of the event that happens more often, to your case, on a global scale. And here's some of the questions that I would like to ask you. When you're designing a large event, how do you balance creativity with the practical side of logistics and budgets?
Tell you what, that's a really good question. And I think it all starts with what the event is for. And I completely agree with you. It's very important to stay creative, to stay relevant. But equally, you do need to balance that operational side of things and delivery of the event. And it all comes down to a couple of really simple steps. I mean, I say simple because nothing we do in the events industry is complicated. It's not chemistry. It's not physics. You don't need to remember a formula. Obviously, there are certain foundations and certain things and processes you kind of need to adopt. And then once you do, it actually gives you a great deal of space to become creative, or to be creative and do things in a different way, and to listen to the market. I think that's probably the most important thing. So going back to how do we do things, it all starts with a strategy. So you need to looking at what your event is about. In my case, it's the hotel show, so it's a hospitality event. So I look into my industry and I put a strategy together. Once you put a strategy together, it's an overarching event strategy that tackles all aspects of the event. So not just your sales, but equally your marketing, your conferences, and we can talk about it a bit later, but your operations as well, how you build your partnerships, who do you need in your event. And then it comes down to planning your resources. HR is a very, very important part of the event cycle, or planning your event, making sure that you have the right team around you, that you have the right people in place to help you. Because I think one of the biggest takeaways about what we do is that you can't do it alone. And the bigger you go, the bigger you grow, the bigger team you need around yourself. And even if you're planning a birthday party, sometimes it gets a bit overwhelming because you need your catering and you need your DJ and you need your balloons and toothpicks. No, never forget toothpicks. So
there is a story there which I'm going to ask
I know,
you later.
that's why I mentioned it. But the bigger you grow, the bigger event you're planning, the less details you're focusing, but the more you rely on your team to help you get there. And it's that team, in addition to the strategy, that is super important. And obviously your timelines. So it's not just having a strategy, but actually having your action plan and sticking to it, and having a huge discipline to really follow things through, and check on those points or timelines or milestones to make sure that you're pacing in the right direction to then allow you to be creative. But again, creativity, it all comes down to what is it that your industry needs? What is it that the hospitality industry in Middle East and Northern Africa needs from me? And how do I answer the needs of the industry? Because being creative is great as long as it serves the purpose of the industry you're serving through your event.
Excellent. And obviously, your stage is one of the biggest stages of all, because we're talking about Dubai, right?
Yeah.
So what makes hosting all these events in Dubai unique compared to the other global destinations?
Oh my God. Again, I'm not paid for this, but Dubai is the best city in the world. It really is. And when I say it, I really mean it. And going back to the events, why is it great? Well, let me tell you, Emirates Airlines is one of the best airlines in the world. So first of all is accessibility. No matter where in the world you're in, you can come to Dubai quite easily. We have great infrastructure. We never strike. That just doesn't happen. So you will never get stranded. Our trains always run on time. We don't have a lot of them, but they always run on time. Taxis are available and cheap compared to the most of the big cities around the globe. Hotels are just incredibly beautiful, luxurious, and actually compared to European, actually our Australian prices as well, quite affordable. There are people from all over the world, and equally our exhibition centers, again talking about infrastructure, our exhibition centers are purposely built. Most often than not, they have marble floors. So again, if you go to other exhibition centers around the globe, like if you go to Milan or you go to Berlin, for instance, those are buildings that have been built over time and that were constructed and reconstructed and added on and whatnot, while Dubai had all of the time in the world to learn from the best practices and do it right from first. So just from a simple logistics point of view and from infrastructure point of view, it's much easier doing it here because we have great services, we have food from all over the world, we have team from all over the world, so it's very multicultural. Yeah, you can get pretty much everything you need over here. So yeah, I wouldn't change it for world. I wouldn't go anywhere else.
So you kind of make me want to come back, to be honest.
There you go. I do that to people.
Yeah. Look, I gotta admit, the times that I had in the Middle East was one of the best times. And I get to meet a lot of people, and I still reflect on the learning and the experiences. Like you said, it's unique. You don't get to see the things that you see in the Middle East, particularly in Dubai and Qatar, and the size and the magnitude of buildings. And then there's this huge contrast. I remember walking through the Dubai Mall, right? You're walking through huge center. You're walking through it, and then on one side you have the Kempinski, which has the ski slope, right?
Yeah. Well, the
So you
Emirates,
have snow in the middle of the desert, and then you turn your gaze to the right, and then you see the desert, the actual desert.
Yeah.
They are so surreal concepts that when you're looking at them, so how is that even possible? It is possible in Dubai.
It is possible, and I tell you what, Dubai gets a fair amount of bad press for some reason. And as someone who has been living here now for over 10 years, I can tell you Dubai is one of the cities in the world that can be everything and anything you want it to be. If you want to find trouble, in a sense that you want to go and party until 5 o'clock in the morning, you can do that. But if you want to have a dog and go for a walk, you can do that too. You want to go to a desert, you can. You want to go to the seaside, you can do that. You want culture and you want heritage, you can find it. You want to go and see the tallest building in the world, you can do that too. So there's so many options, and not just Dubai. I mean, Abu Dhabi as well. Abu Dhabi is really emerging as a big cultural destination. So I think UAE has done an incredible job of diversifying itself and really reinventing itself, really. And it's almost the case that if you come here and visit it and then you come back after 5 years, certain areas of town or of the country you wouldn't even be able to recognize. Ras Al Khaimah, which is an emirate just north of Dubai, is now building the first casino, set to open in 2027. Abu Dhabi just announced a couple of months ago, we're going to get a first Disney center here in the Middle East, which is great news. So we're all looking forward to it. But there's so many great things that are happening. If you look at the concert calendar, going back to the fun stuff of the events, if you look at the concert calendar across the Emirates between now and the end of the year, there's so many good events, sport events. We now have a basketball league over here, and so on and so forth. So it's really diverse and it's really multicultural, and there's that sense of constant growth and buzz. And if you want to learn and grow and really do something with your life, here it kind of feels like the whole system is set up for you to do that. And I haven't really seen, and I lived in Europe, I lived in Doha, I lived in the States, and now I'm here, and I haven't seen that anywhere else. We have a radio station that is purely focused on business. So if you're interested in learning about business or becoming an entrepreneur, you can tune in and listen to those stories every day, completely free of charge. So it's incredible. Yeah.
Which gives me the perfect segue to my next question, because obviously Dubai is a magnet of attracting people, attracting talent from all over the world.
Yeah.
And you have the multicultural facet, but also presents yourself with a challenge, which is how do you manage such large teams with staff, volunteers, when you're doing your events?
That's a really good question as well. And like I said, the bigger event you're working on, the more you're actually reliant on your team. So it comes to delegation, it comes to strategy, it comes to delegation, it comes to trusting your team to do their job and working with them to make sure that everyone on the team is aligned and we're all working towards a common goal. To give you an example, if you're talking about the scale, right? So the event that I'm currently working on takes about 15,000 square meters. I looked it up last night in preparation for our interview, and for those who play tennis, that's about 57 tennis courts.
Wow.
So it's big. It's big. And then obviously, you can't deliver an event like that on by yourself. You need your team around you. You need your volunteers. You need your core team. But when it comes to the team, earlier I mentioned, so I have a team of 3 salespeople. I have a team of 3 marketers. There is a production team of 2 fantastic girls who are doing our conferences because we have 3 of them. Over the course of 3 days, and quite interesting ones as well. And then there's an operational team. An operational team is tasked with all the deliveries and all operational stuff. Like they will help build the exhibition, then they will help people run smoothly through it, and then in the end they will help dismantle the whole thing. But we're talking a huge scale. So you're talking about over 300,000 exhibitors from all over the world. And then during the open days, we have a lot this year in May, we had over 10,000 visitors. So huge amounts of people. And how do you manage it? You manage it through delegation and relying on your team to take ownership of each one of the sections. So yeah, if there's one thing that we can summarize the world of the events and say this is the most important part of it, that's actually working with the team and having your team empowered and capable of delivering their side of the puzzle, their piece of the puzzle.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I remember trying to, when you're building our events, we did it in Europe, we did it in the Middle East. I'm doing that. I did it in Australia with different events and venues. The thing that I found most challenging is, as technology was progressing, how to maintain and manage the people that you're working with, but at the same time, increase the productivity. Yeah. So when we're talking about technology in events these days, what role does it play to making these big events run smoothly? And if you want to give an example, will be during COVID. And I remember when the whole world shut down, there was a shift. Everything went online. How did that affect you? And the technology was a bonus? Did it added value, or did you see it as a negative thing that happened in events?
I tell you what, without technology in the events industry, we'll be completely lost. So it's a very instrumental part of it, because if you think just the figures that I've given previously, 15,000 square meters, over 300 exhibitors, 10,000 visitors. So we're hearing all of these numbers, and what that transpires into is data. So it's all about data, and I'm not even talking about AI yet. So if we look into, and we'll come to that point, if you look into planning these big events, how it all starts with data. So what is the process? Like I was again, I knew we were gonna talking about what I do and how things go in my organization, and it's one of the things that actually you literally need to stop for a second, and when you write it all down, you say, wow, I would actually be completely lost without this. And it all starts with CRM, right? Your customer relationship management system. And for instance, we're using Salesforce, and there are many others out there. Like if you work in a hotel, you'll probably be using Opera, to name a few big ones. Back in the convention bureau, we use a Simple View. But it all starts with a really good and strong CRM system, because you need to be able to capture the data and be able to process the data of 300 exhibitors in a safe manner. Right, so there's a huge amount of risk involved in that as well, and compliance and GDPR and whatnot nowadays. But it's a very powerful tool to help us do what we do. So it starts with the CRM system. Then when you think about going to an event, and let's say if you're going to a trade event, you need to register for it. Some events are paid for, so it's ticketing. You need to pay for your ticket. How do we process that? We process it with technology, by using technology. Then you come to an event, and then most events nowadays have an event app. So you go to the app, and then you're able to schedule your meetings in advance, or you're sitting in the middle of this 15,000 square meters wanting to find a company that does amenities for your hotel. How do you find them? You click on a wayfinding, and so on and so forth. And so it's a huge amount of data, it's a huge amount of technology, and we're not even talking about AV. AV is like the simplest thing ever that we use for conferences, and it's almost not even worth the mention compared to all of the other systems we use to help us get there and plan these events. And then on top of that, we add AI and the massive disruption that is already happening. And I tell you what, I don't see it. Yeah, it is disruption, definitely, but I'm an internal optimist, and I completely see AI as a very good tool to help us eliminate laborsome tasks that are very time consuming, like reporting, for instance, or summarizing the data, or coming up with conclusions based on the data inputs. And I see AI being instrumental in helping us to be more efficient. Back to your question, to be more efficient, to elevate the capabilities of our teams more so they can be creative, while AI can do those time-consuming tasks that we still have to do.
It's interesting because I read a post the other day, and they said, I want AI to do my laundry and dishes so I can do my writing and thinking, not the other way around.
Absolutely, yeah, I've seen that as well. Yeah.
So, looking at it from that perspective, we want AI to help us so we can have time to do the things that we love to do. And one of them is writing or being creative, and bring those ideas in life, and use AI sort of like a intern that you can throw stuff at them and then come back to you. You can use them, filter them out, and use what you need for your event, for example.
100%. One thing I haven't, sorry, you asked me about COVID, and I haven't really touched upon that. COVID was a terrible time for the events industry. And yes, some event companies were able to pivot quite quickly and use technology to streamline some services or to do online webinars. But if anything, COVID has taught us that more than ever, despite all of the technology and social media and capabilities and phones and cameras and videos and TikToks and whatnot, it taught us that actually one of the most important things in our lives is a human connection. And if anything, we've noticed that there's a huge spike in a period after COVID, especially from 2022 and onwards. There's a huge growth in the events industry, simply demonstrating that, yes, it's great that we have technology to amplify our communication and help us in certain ways. But more than anything, we do appreciate having a coffee together and shaking hands and doing business in good old traditional way. And that's not going to go anywhere.
I remember the Costa coffee back in Qatar, just across the hotel, go in and get that coffee. That was amazing. Having that little break, going in, and sometimes I remember watching the Sarab at the lounge, at the lobby of the St. Regis, and literally it was a Sarab. And Sarab, for all of you don't know what it means. It's just the mirage in the end of the horizon. So you think that it's happening or it's not happening. But those moments of having a conversation, having that cup of coffee, and connecting at the human level, a human-centric approach, I don't think that's going to go anywhere.
No.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Now,
Yeah.
once we move away from that, and you need to organize all this, somebody needs to pay for it. And I understand. In Dubai, you have a plethora of people coming in, and they have a lot of budgets, and there is a lot of financial support because of the oil and everything that happens in the region. But even so, there is a highly competitive market. How do you secure the finance to be able to run these events?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and a really good one to bring up. So going back to what are the basic principles, how do we do things? So we talked about strategy, and then we talked about resources. Planning the finances or working on an event is like working in any other organization or working on any other business. If you have a shop, you have a P&L. So you have a profit and loss statement of your shop, and do it monthly or do it quarterly or whatnot. It's the same with us, because working on an event is like running your own little business, and we have P&L, and you set the budget at the beginning, and then you look at your revenue streams, you look at your cost of operations, and you put it on your P&L system, and then you forecast to where you think you're going to finish. And obviously, based on what your capabilities are or what your historical performance is, you kind of know where you're going to end up. So it all starts with budget planning. And most importantly is, like you said, what your revenue streams are. So you need to diversify your revenue streams, but equally not manage losses. We don't really have losses in a sense, but we have cost of operation. So you manage your revenue streams, so your cost of operation. And revenue streams, again, I'm talking about corporate events now. I'm a boring girl, so I talk about corporate side of the events, not so much of the fun bits. You look at your
Where's Dana?
revenue
I need to
streams.
talk to
Say again.
her. Where is Dana? I need to talk to her.
Diana, yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's not that dissimilar, and I'll touch upon that. So when you look at, let's say, you take any big international trade exhibition, most often than not, you'll have about three revenue streams. So you'll have your revenue stream that comes from your exhibitors. So they'll be paying for space to be at your event, at your exhibition. You'll have your sponsors, who may or may not be the same type of customer that you're pitching for your exhibition. And then you may or may not have your delegate sales. So you can be a paid for event where you charge for tickets for the audience to come and be at your event, or you could be free. Most traded exhibitions around the world are paid for. So you will have your delegate sales or your visitor sales tickets as a part of your revenue. And how do you manage that? In my case, we have a full year cycle to manage the sales. And again, it comes to planning the budget. So you kind of need to know what percentage of your total revenue comes from your exhibitors, what percentage comes from your sponsors, and what comes from your delegate sales. And then it's managing all three of these group of customers through CRM, through use of technology, through actively engaging with all three of these groups. And we are slowly starting to dive into marketing over here. But it's really important that whatever your event is about, the messaging, your marketing, from your website to your social media, through the interviews to podcast, if you have it, streamlines into that messaging that is overarching and that comes out of the overall event strategy. So it sounds complex, but it's really not. In a nutshell, you have your strategy, you set your budget, you know where your revenue comes from, and then you go and target your target groups where the revenue comes from.
Exactly. And you have your customers, and you can see how your event is going to benefit them. And then
Absolutely.
you can leverage that success. And being in the industry, and one of the top ones that you're already in the companies that you're working for, that is also a very good leverage for you to go and talk to them, which is amazing, my point. And
Absolutely.
said,
And it's all about the customer. Everything we do, one thing we need to keep in mind is who is your customer, and what is it that your customer wants? Or in a nutshell, to really simplify it even more, if we're talking about a trade exhibition, you need to know who your buyers are, and you need to know who your sellers are, and then you put them together.
It's more of you are in the middle. You're the mediator. You are the middleman.
We are a platform. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
That's it. So, in in order for you to do that, obviously you need marketing, and you need some. We talked about you need to have your budget, and you need to do that. In these days, where we consume everything from Instagram, TikTok, different avenues, how do you market your exhibitions?
And that's an excellent question and a perfect one to continue from where we just left it off. Like I said, it all comes down to segmentation. So we talked about Dubai and the cultural implications and where we are and how it's great to do business here. But it all comes down to what are you? What is your event about, and who is it for? So, for instance, we talked about our revenue streams, and we said we have our exhibitors, we have our sponsors, and we have our delegates or our visitors. The marketing starts from understanding what is the event about, what we are, what is our strategy, what is the message we want to put across. So again, in our case, it's being the biggest and the most important platform in the hospitality industry for our region, and our region is Middle East and Northern Africa. So from there, you then start planning your marketing strategy, and you focus again on segmenting your event and making sure that you touch upon each one of the segments. So it's not just making sure from a marketing perspective to bring your visitors, but marketing plays a crucial role in elevating the visibility of the event, because like you said, there's plenty of competitors around there, and marketing helps us put across our USP, our unique selling proposition, and it helps us attract equally our exhibitors, our sponsors, and then our visitors. So they're dealing with quite a lot of data, and this is not unique to the events industry. So once you're a marketer, whether you're helping Armani market his clothes, or you're helping an exhibition, or you're helping a food chain market their new milk product, you're still doing the same thing. You have your customer, you need to segment your messaging based on who your customer is, and then you try to target them through all of the channels that are available to you.
That's right. Yeah. And these days, it's everything is online, so everything is out there, and with algorithms trying to decide who is going to get where, it can become very challenging. And that's why we need to have a very specialized USP, like you said, unique selling point, that will come and rise above everything else, clear out the noise, so it can be in front of every exhibitor or customer that want to come in.
Yeah,
now,
absolutely.
They're coming into your event, and obviously big buildings, huge. There is, like you said, 57 tennis courts.
Tennis courts, yeah.
US Open just happened, and I can't imagine it. You get to see the pan on the top, and you can see the different fields. You can see here at the Australian Open, but I can't count more than 7 or 8. And we're talking about 57 of them. Just scale of what these events are, and these buildings and this infrastructure are built for, which comes with its own set of risks and safety.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about having a huge amount of people coming through a very confined space like these buildings, it becomes a challenge. What kind of precautions do you guys get in order for you to be safe and have that mitigation if something happens?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I can totally appreciate it's a super important one to tackle. I guess being in Dubai, being in the UAE, we have it really easy here, in a sense that UAE is known for being one of the safest places in the world, and the crime rates that you see back in Europe, in the States in particular, even in Australia, are just not there. So from a perspective of managing the crowds and managing a large group of people, we have it relatively easy, at least at the event that I'm currently working on. Nevertheless, previously when I worked for ADNEC, I used to work for Abu Dhabi National Exhibition Center in Abu Dhabi, which is a huge venue. Again, talking about the size, they have over 120,000 square meters of space, including indoor and outdoor. So massive, massive scale. But ADNEC used to, they still do, host quite high-profile government events and gatherings. And these events are a little bit stricter in a sense that when when there are high-ranking politicians or members of the royal family or international dignitaries, security at the event really needed to be taken up a notch. So we would always have police present, quite more often than not. We'll have police sweeps inside the hall with dogs and whatnot, with metal detectors and whatnot. But yeah, it just, and then again, some of the events that I've seen in ADNEC used to have a very strict registration policy where every single badge needed to be approved by the government. But we're talking about really high profile events, and quite often they're not invitation only and whatnot. So yeah, different events require different measures. Sports events, again, are quite strict. Because obviously there's a huge number of public attendees involved and whatnot. So yeah, again, talking about fun events and corporate events, I think on the corporate side of things, we have it a bit easier. So that's something to be taken into consideration.
I guess it's more a controlled environment. You know exactly who's coming in and out. And it's more of a sense of maintaining the building, identifying your risk areas, and have the evacuation plan in place. If something happens, everybody knows what they're doing. Evacuation process.
Absolutely. But that's always, yeah. So there's health and safety standards that are to be implied at every event, like you said. So your evacuation points are always there. But every time you go to a hotel, you will find in a corridor, you'll find a little map that shows you what evacuation route is. You'll find your sprinklers, for instance. Personally, I don't really get involved too much in that stuff because, again, it comes to delegation. We have the whole operational team that takes care of these things, and probably what matters the most is during we call it a build-up. So during the setup of the exhibition or during the dismantle, it's quite important to keep an eye on those rules and regulations, but they're always set, and we know we need to respect them. For instance, if you go into an enclosed space, you always know what your emergency exits are, and there's a gap that needs to be left in between your emergency exit and your stands, or how many sprinklers we need to have, or if there's any double-decker structure, then those structures need to have their own sprinklers and fire retardants and stuff like that. So yeah, there's a lot of really nitty-gritty details when it comes to health and safety. It's hugely important. But again, when it comes to large exhibitions, it's almost like on your check sheet, same thing. Like you have to have your strategy and you have to have your budget. When it comes to your floor plan management, health and safety needs to be satisfied. Otherwise, you don't open the exhibition. So it's one of the things that can't be neglected.
And if you don't sign off, you don't have an exhibition.
Exactly, as simple as that. There's no compromise on that.
So with all these resources being used, we're talking about human capital, we're talking about resources in terms of equipment that you need to bring in. You're talking about logistics. We're talking about having all these people to be coordinated. There is an element of sustainability behind, because obviously huge events will have a bigger footprint, carbon footprint on the planet. And sustainability moving forward has become one of the main issues, knowing that the planet's warming and we need to do something about it. What is one of the strategies that you use in your company to minimize that and promote sustainability?
You see, that's actually a really good question, and there's two ways to look at it. We can look at it from a perspective that organizing an event where you have global participants having to use transportation and several methods of it, from a taxi to a plane to a metro to a taxi again, probably. Then through so travel, right? And then when you look at it from a perspective that exhibitions actually help economy move on, and the economy in return helps us sustain our jobs and feed our families and put a food on the table. Exhibitions do play a huge part in being those movers of economy and making sure that the wheels are spinning, right? When it comes, and that's from one side of the things. on talking about sustainability and sustainable use of resources, that becomes a bit more difficult, because is travel sustainable? Not really. If you sit on a bicycle and you go to your neighbor's house, that's purely sustainable, because you're not using any gas, you're not using any petrol, you're just cycling. But if you were going to come and see my event, you do need to sit on a plane. And is that sustainable? Not really. So, I think it's easy for us to criticize events industry, but equally we kind of need to look at the other from the other perspective as well, and see what are the benefits of the events industry. What we are doing is not to say it's massively important to try and utilize our resources to the best of our ability. However, it's quite difficult when it comes to exhibitions in particular, because if you think about it, the carpet we use in the exhibition centers is one of the biggest polluters ever. What we are doing about it, we actually have a permanent office, a sustainability officer that works actively with us and all the teams within the company to try and minimize those effects. So we started cutting the carpet and using it only where necessary. And again, it comes a point where you really need to think hard about this, and there's no easy answer here. Do you want to sacrifice an experience of your exhibitors and your visitors in order to cut the carpet and be a bit more sustainable? And it's not an easy answer, but I think the balance is somewhere in between, and finding and fine-tuning these two aspects, because both are equally important. There are some great examples around the world, but again, talking about smaller scale, there is a great conference organizer in Slovenia, going back to Southern Europe, that organizes a mice event. They have a mice conference, more of a conference, not so much an exhibition. They came up with an idea not to build stands for their participants or their exhibitors, but to use vegetable crates, the wooden ones, and they use them every year. And everybody has the same stand. You just stack up the crates, and then you can stick in some branding, or you can, bring your laptop and do your spiel or your sales pitch or whatever not on your laptop. But the idea is to reuse, and they do reuse those crates, and they store them in a place, and they use them year over year. And that's a great example, but unfortunately, when we're talking about the large-scale exhibitions, it's just not possible. It is not feasible to do it that way. Again, not to say that we shouldn't stop trying, and we are, but finding the way forward is a bit difficult. We are actively looking into materials that we are using, into materials that we could potentially replicate and reuse. So, for instance, shell scheme stand is a typical option. Shell scheme stand, for those who don't know, is a panel. Is normally 3 meters by 1 meter panel that is stackable. And we work with exhibition builders that reuse those panels year over year. So you're renting them out rather than buying them out. And then once you're done with the exhibition, they get stacked up and they get taken away and brought back again. So again, water is a huge thing, especially here in the Middle East, where we don't really have source of potable water. Making sure that we have water fountains rather than small plastic ones, and so on and so forth. So I would say that the efforts that we are trying are still at its infancy, but the industry is collectively actively thinking about how to become more sustainable in the future.
You can see the challenge, and you can see it, like you said, and I'll highlight that. We're talking about the creme de la creme. You're talking about the biggest stages of them all. You need to give the experience to everyone to experience Dubai exhibitions, the product, and then comes with some downfall. But the steps that you are taking, and obviously with technology advancements, there will be bringing up to a point that sustainability will be achievable across not only events, we're talking about across many, many industries.
Absolutely. And we hope so.
We talked about Dubai being the hub of multicultural, East meets West, and you have a lot of people that come in that bring their own culture influences. We're talking about food, music, ethics. There is a mosaic of people from all over the world. And you can feel it, you can sense it when you walk in the streets of Dubai when it's not hot, mind you, not hot, because on the other side, I've seen, the rubber around the windscreen of the cars being melted because of the temperature. But we have this multicultural rainbow, if you like, in Dubai, and you have a lot of people coming through. And how do you? It's easy to manage a team that you already know and you talk about, but when all of a sudden you have multiple ethnicities coming through, you have this multicultural rainbow coming through. How do you manage to become inclusive and with people from different backgrounds and manage and put that in your event?
You see, this is why being in Dubai is so incredible, because Dubai is inclusive and it's already multicultural. So it's almost as given and almost as no one even talks about it because it's natural. So you go to the office and then you have over 30 nationalities. You come to your event and there's people from 60 something countries that visit you. And it's very refreshing. And I haven't seen this anywhere else in the world. Well, yeah, you go to big international exhibitions around the world, you'll probably experience something similar. But in Dubai, it doesn't just happen during the event. It happens. It's your day life. It happens every day. You walk, and it's funny. It's funny how I was telling you a story when I just arrived to Doha. I was very confused because people I didn't know were greeting me and asking me, how am I doing? And I was like, well, you don't know me. Why are you suddenly interested in me? And then I realized that's what you do. That's how it goes. And it's learning. It's learning to adapt to all these different cultures. It's learning how to speak to different cultures, and it's interesting at the same time. If you think about Dutch people are very direct. So are we. British people like to put everything in a little silver foil, and you can't call a spade, as they say, to use their own expression. But you kind of like, if it's raining outside, they will talk about how nice the weather is, thinking it's actually not, and I really don't want to leave my house today. But then you learn through this, and it's quite funny at the same time. Like yesterday, it was quite funny. I was working with a colleague of mine, and he's one of our sales directors, a great guy from India, and we had to send an email to one of our partners, and the way he phrased an email was nothing like I would ever say in my life, but it achieves the same result, absolutely. But it's literally just looking at the way you put the sentence together or the way you put certain things across. It all comes down to communication. But the beauty of it is everybody's welcome. And Dubai really, from the top government, and that trickles down through all of the organizations and through rules, sends a clear message that everyone is welcome. And that's the biggest beauty of it.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I told you before, I'm really, really keen to get back to the Middle East. Not just because we're discussing, it's just the fond memories that I have from the Middle East. Olja, I had you for an hour. I want to thank you for your time. But before I let you go, what is the advice that you would give people that would like to work in the event industry? What is the one skill that we need to develop in order for us to be able to not only work and achieve, but also thrive in event industry?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I enjoyed our conversation, and excellent question to wrap things up. Nothing we do is a rocket science. It's not a difficult industry to be a part of. If anything, it's very challenging, but it's very rewarding at the same time. One thing that I would say is, what can you do? Having your team around you, learning how to work with a team, and developing your leadership skills, or even just being a team player, is the most important thing in this industry, because you don't get anywhere alone. But with a team and with having respect for your team and working together with your team, developing your team and learning from your team is what can get you really far. And whether you're in marketing or you choose a sales path or you really want to be a project manager or you end up being the director or CEO of an events company, you learn the skills that are transferable across industries, whether it's IT or marketing or whatnot. But one thing that this industry needs, and it's absolutely crucial, is being able to work as a team, being part of a team or lead a team one day.
That's amazing. I love that. I love the way you put it together. It reminds me of an African proverb which says, if you want to go there fast, go alone. If you want to travel far, go with the team.
Exactly.
Just sums it all up.
Exactly.
Yeah, has been a pleasure. It's been great having you and answering all these questions. And I hope to catch you up again on another topic. And hopefully I can have this conversation again.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Just stop recording.
Ka-ching!
And